Okay, the Dogs are going to assign, it turns out, Matt DeBerry, it looks like the consensus number two class in the country. This is something that they've been, Georgia, Alabama, they have been trading blows at the top here for some time. Just kind of, well, let me go to Ryan first. Quick thoughts on once more Alabama and Georgia at or near the top of recruiting rankings. I'm sure you're shocked.
It's I woke up, looked at that, and didn't know how to go about the rest of my day, Dean. It's what's been happening for years. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
see why it's going to change. Nick Saban's still kicking, still getting those top classes after all these years. Georgia at Kirby is going to continue to do that. I mean, there's a reason why they're playing in these big games all the time. It starts here.
Yeah, Matt, they went, the consensus was Bama, Georgia, Texas OU, and then Ohio State. So Ohio State slipped a little bit, if you want to call it that. But, and then LSU, Miami, Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee, Notre Dame round out the top 10. No Florida, no Gators, no Carolina, obviously, no Clemson, no Florida State. The teams that have been making noise and have new coaches in some way, LSU, Miami, Oregon, to some degree, Tennessee, Notre Dame. These are all guys with new coaches. Sark, I guess, is a new coach. Oklahoma had a good class, although they needed one. Good God knows. But Alabama and Georgia, the other classes weren't like Alabama and Georgia. So that's the one thing I would say of everybody else is out there. Texas a little bit, but it really fell off after Georgia, I'd say.
Yeah, it's Alabama, Georgia, big gap, and then everyone else. And
Right.
you ready for a hot take? Both of you ready for this one?
Here we go.
I think this is going to be Georgia's best defensive class that Kirby has signed since he's been in Athens. They put together, the defensive line. You've got Jamal Jarrett, who's going to be their Jordan Davis type, 330, 340, just big man in the middle, eating up blocks. Next to him, you've got Jordan Hall, probably the closest to Jalen Carter as we're going to see. The guy who rose up the rankings the last few weeks. He's a consensus 5-star now, I think. You've got two long athletic edge rushers, Sam and Pemba, Damon Wilson at linebacker. You've got three of the best inside linebackers in the country, C.J. Allen, Troy Bowles, Raylan Wilson. And then they just loaded up with defensive backs. The guy who I think could play early is Janelle Aguero, hard-hitting safety who is going to come and help you in the box. A.J. Harris is a 5-star corner. Chris Peel, a 4-star corner that they absolutely love. They got Justin Wright, a safety out of Las Vegas. They cleaned up defensively. I mean, everywhere you look, they got guys who could really push for playing time in their first year at a lot of other programs. If they want to see the field early, and maybe they will against Ball State and Tennessee State or whoever they're playing again in the beginning of the year. But these are guys who are very, very talented. And I think Kirby wants to get them in these games as much as possible in year one, because a lot of these guys might be able to see, some starting roles in year two and especially in year three. But defensively, this is an A-plus class. Obviously, they didn't take a quarterback. They only took one running back, so a couple question marks on the offense. But defensively, I mean, they check every box you could imagine. A-plus effort on the defensive side of the ball in that 23 class.
So here's my question, Matt. People get concerned about this. This has never been something that has been problematic to me. Georgia only signed 5 kids from Georgia. Now, some of this stuff is skewed because of these academies, whether you're talking about IMG or wherever else. Okay, but this was as spread out a class as I can recall in covering Georgia's recruiting over the last quarter century. I mean, it is all over the place. What probability is there that over time this will affect the program's recruiting in state?
I don't think it will, because I think they're going to do, they're going to get a lot of kids in the 24 class for a lot of different reasons. But number one, the 24 class is absolutely loaded in Georgia. It's very top heavy.
People say that every year, and it seems like they don't. Go ahead.
Not so much in last year. Now, they did miss on Caleb Downs, so I think he's going to be a first-round pick after 3 years. He is phenomenal. A bright, shiny 5-star kid. Didn't get him. They didn't get Justice Haynes at running back. But in state, those are probably the only 2 guys that they recruited in the state of Georgia that they didn't get. In 24, they're recruiting a lot of other guys. And I can make videos on videos of their 24 targets, and I probably will soon. But it seems like they're targeting a lot more guys in the 24 class than they did last year, which, leaves, schools like South Carolina and Clemson to come up and snatch all these guys that didn't really have a committable offer from Georgia. So you're seeing a lot of schools coming to Georgia in this past 23 cycle and get a lot of kids. And it's because Georgia got a few. They missed on a couple. But, and again, I've said for a while, if they like a kid in the middle of nowhere of Texas better than a kid in Gwinnett County, they're going to go get that kid out of Texas. And that's what you do when you build championship programs. You don't settle for a kid down the street who you think you can land instead of going after a big fish that you're going to fight for. And they're going after the best of the best. So
pick up double. Hey,
double dogs. Yeah.
I'm actually cutting you off to pick up double dogs today. It makes me think of the guys on this team, with Keeley, Darnell, Brock Bowers, Kendall Milton. Those guys were elite players. The link is down below on Double Dogs. Make sure you're picking it up today. It's our look at the 2022 National Championship at Georgia. But when you think about, I went out to Fresno to see Kendall. You went to see Keeley and Darnell. We did not get out to Brock, but he wasn't playing his senior year anyway in California. I think what happens now, Matt, and Ryan can jump in too, is the funnel at Georgia is they have identified these players so early that they can really recruit whoever they want nationally. From there's the reason 20 years ago why in-state recruiting mattered so much was because of relationships with high school coaches and players in the state, and you could build those relationships. You had an advantage because it was your home, etc. You had the relationships. Now, with the way things are, you can narrow in on so-called national kids, blue chip kids, 5-star, high 4-star kids. You can narrow in on them earlier in their timeline. Am I wrong here, Matt? That's the evolution of recruiting, is that there's so much more data now. There's 24/7, there's rivals, there's On3, there are a plethora of ways to identify talent, and it doesn't escape these coaches across the country. I mean, there are people that do what we do for a living that are basically feeding information to the coaches. That's how it works. And when they're ninth grade, that's when they're getting it. It's all across the country. That's how this works now.
Yeah, and it's important to get them on campus as early as possible. See them face to face. Eventually, you got to see these kids in person. Obviously, you watch their film and you hear about these guys, but get them on campus for a game. Doesn't matter how young they are. Let them get a feel for Georgia. That's why they have these junior days. There are some in January where they just get all these young players on campus, start to build that relationship with them. And then they've got camps in June. And we saw a lot of kids earn offers working out for the staff in June and then became major targets. So you have to boost their ego a little bit. These young kids, you give them an offer. It's not really an offer. It's a, hey, we like your film and we're going to keep in touch with you type of offer. You can't really officially offer a kid who's just a freshman and has only played 1 year. But you can give them an offer and say, hey, we're interested in you. You're on our radar. We know who you are. Let's keep this relationship going. And then if you're towards the top of our board, this time next year or in 2 years, then yeah, let's talk about you, actually having a spot in this class. But you have to reach out to these kids and show interest early on, or else, a lot of these kids and their crazy uncle or their coach or their trainer, they get their feelings hurt. And a lot of these kids have a lot of different people in their ear, and they're going to say, what, they didn't come at you until later. Get these other schools, first dibs, I guess, on visits or whatever. So you've got to play that role. You've got to show interest early. You got to get them on campus and just build that relationship. And it starts earlier and earlier and earlier.
All right, Ryan. Why, with Bama and Georgia continuing to be at the top there, should we expect something different in the near future from the landscape of college football? You tell me why that should happen.
Why should we expect something different than those two at the top?
Yeah, you can take the statement.
NIL.
Okay.
I mean, Texas, USC, schools like that, A&M. I mean, these collectives are being put together. The money is, people are coming up with the money. We're seeing it through the transfer portal mostly, but I mean, even in just I can't even remember the kid's name, but recent news, it's like, oh, well, this guy had a $13 or $14 million NIL offer to come here, and that fell through, so he's going somewhere else. That's going to change. I don't know how much that's happening with Georgia and Bama and where these NIL promises are part of the recruiting pitch. I don't know. Maybe Matt does. But that's what's going to change things. That's going to continue to change things, in my opinion, because you're going to see Lincoln Riley and USC and that California money. You're going to see the Texas money is going to matter. I mean, it has to have mattered at least a little bit with Arch Manning. I mean, you saw the rumors of how much they spent on his recruiting trip weekends and everything like that. That's what would alter the consistency of Alabama and Georgia. What's different with them is they win national championships. And that's part of the pitch. They're developing 3-star, low 4-star guys. They go out and get them. A.D. Mitchell was a 3-star from Texas, and they developed him they helped develop him into what he is. They go in state and find guys. So they're going to continue to win those battles, but I think NIL is what would change things.
That may be. I'll ask you this though, Ryan or Matt. I don't think there's any one thing that's going to prevent Georgia or Alabama. Like, they're not going to stop just because of money. Y'all are both agreeing with me, so I don't think I really have to say anything further than that. Bama and Georgia 1-2 again. This is a really good Alabama class, so Matt, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, number 1 offensive tackle, number 1 safety, number 1 edge defender. They really, really cleaned up. It's one of the best classes on paper. I will say, though, I think Georgia's 2024 class is going to be up there with Alabama's class last year and Texas A&M's in 2022. It's going to be one of the best. I expect it to be number 1 in the country. So, yeah, stay tuned for all that.